evening. I'm Derek Fildebrandt, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. Today is December 20th, 2023. It's almost Christmas time. I'm joined, as usual, by Western Standard opinion editor Nigel Hannaford. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to the shortest day of the year tomorrow, and the light starts coming back.
Indeed.
But the light never departed, the Western Standard.
It never does. It's always light here. And Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Corey.
Oh, thanks, Derek.
You had Krampus on your show today.
I did. It was a special appearance, something different. I mean, we're the Western Standard. We're not going to have some cheesy old Santa in here.
Everyone's
We've got to have
Santa.
Krampus. Nobody has Krampus. We have the exclusive on Krampus.
He also may have crashed our annual staff Christmas party, as is tradition around here.
So who's Krampus?
That's confidential.
Well,
No. What's
Krampus himself? I mean, Derek is better to explain the origins.
Germany and South Austria. The way I define it is, it's kind of a good cop, bad cop routine of Saint Nicholas and Krampus. And Krampus is more or less the Christmas demon. And they go good cop, bad cop, naughty and nice. And Krampus, he's a mean, ugly demon ape-like creature, and he's got a bundle of sticks, and he beats the children for being bad. He also has a bag that, if they're really bad, the children go in the bag, and he takes them to hell. I think that's more of like a theoretical thing. They don't actually take the children to hell, but it's just there.
They don't need to know that.
Exactly. It's there just as like, don't make me get the belt boy kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
So anyway, Krampus makes a few appearances around here.
He did, and it was a troublesome guest. He kept trying to hit me with his bloody sticks, and he's not one for a lot of words, but all the same, it was a good interview.
But Krampus in previous years at our annual Christmas party, he's danced.
A lap dancer. Actually.
He has not danced this year though.
No.
Yeah, we've had HR department complaints about Krampus.
Well. He'll take them off to hell next.
Indeed. He'll take HR to hell in a bag. Okay. Today we're going to talk about Hamas supporters coming even more into the open and now trying to disrupt Christmas shopping, Christmas celebrations. We had Hamas supporters in the Eaton's Mall in Toronto. It's kind of the big, that's the main mall in Toronto, I guess. Hamas supporters going through there, trying to disrupt the Santa area and the shoppers. And so you had a bunch of terrified little kids who are just sitting on Santa's knee, looking up at a bunch of Mujahideen terrorist supporters, dressed very much the part. Like, it's not like they're not trying to look like terrorist supporters. They're dressed like terrorists. The masks, the checkered scarves and all. Yeah. They got it all. Like, these guys look like an ISIS recruiting video, and they're walking right through a mall, threatening to kill people, feet away from the police, and the police doing nothing, and promises from Hamas supporters to continue disrupting Christmas. The Jews might be small enough a number that they get away with it. Effing with Christmas could go badly. I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of Hamas supporters in our streets, Scotia Bank says, quote, excessive immigration is driving inflation in Canada. That's coming from their VP, head of capital markets. So not usual to see that coming from kind of an establishment figure, but a recognition that these incredible excessive immigration numbers, you don't have to be anti-immigration here, but these are eye-watering immigration numbers that we're taking in, many of which are probably supporting Hamas now in our community malls, is driving inflation. Ottawa, promising essentially to ban non-electric vehicles within a few years, mandating that you can only buy electric cars. That's going to go really well. Do they know that we can just literally cross the border and buy cars in another country and not pay the taxes here? I don't know if he's heard of border shopping.
But can you register them? That'll be the thing.
Well,
registration is provincial.
They'll set up tariffs. That's federal.
They will set up tariffs, but then you're running into NAFTA or whatever it's been renamed now. So anyway, that's fun. It's sparked, I don't know, the 10,000th front of war between Alberta and Saskatchewan on one side and the federal government on the other. And speaking of which, Alberta is now promising to continue its fight against Ottawa's plastics ban. Ottawa banning things like, I don't know, real straws and grocery bags, even compostable grocery bags, if they seem too convenient. Ottawa having lost in court, and but is promising to appeal that, to reinstitute and reimpose the ban on nice things, and Alberta promising to continue its fight in court against it. Before we get into it, though, let's just a quick note of one of my favorite sponsors, Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Why don't you take it away, Corey?
Well, yeah, they're a fantastic sponsor and a great group. If you own firearms, collect firearms, you're a hunter, target shooter, any of those things, doesn't matter. It's nobody else's business, actually, as long as you're a law-abiding person. You need to be a member of this group. We've got a government that's trying to take away your right and ability to enjoy those firearms, to enjoy that property. And if you do not stand up for yourself, if we don't get together, you're going to lose those rights. And the Canadian Shooting Sports Association is standing up for those rights. They're a fantastic group. They got all sorts of resources on their website as well. Check them out. Google Canadian Shooting Sports Association and their website, CSSA-CILA.org. And aside from investing in yourself with a membership with them, which is very cost effective, there's all kinds of resources in there. It's a great website. Check them out, guys. If you're a firearms owner, you gotta.
All right. I love Dave Naylor, our news editor, named our first segment here. We have a few ideas, but Dave named it Ho Ho Hamas. So we've had Hamas supporters in the streets since the attack on Israel. Was it October 7th or
October
so?
7th.
October 7th.
October 7th. Massacring civilians, including women and children. We've had Hamas supporters in the streets all over Western cities, but in Canada in particular, operating with impunity, and holding rallies, calling for genocide, murder of the Jewish people, erasure of the Israeli state. But it's escalated. They know they're getting away with more and more, and they're getting bolder and bolder. Now they're targeting Christmas. I mean, I can't think of a dumber PR move to take for a movement. Going after Christmas is just it's almost too easy to make fun of Grinch and all that stuff. But now they're the latest one was significant disruption at the Eaton's Mall in Toronto.
I'm telling you, because if he touches me, I'll put him on the floor. You come near me, I'll put you lay down on the floor. I'll lay you sleep. I'll put you 6 feet deep. I'll put you 6 feet deep. English told the cop will put him 6 feet up. Yeah.
That is what we want to do with Palestine, and we're going to be on our way to the front.
He's not trying to shit. He's a pussy, bro. Leave him. Oh, bitches. Yeah, we don't know. You guys up here, we looking at you. If you're really a pussy, come on. No. You're a bitch. No, we're not going to hurt him. You're a bitch.
Free Palestine! Guys, leave him.
Yeah, Palestine, you know what you can do? Bitch ass boy. I'll slap the fuck out of you. I'll put you 6 feet deep. Come. If you're a man, come touch me. Come touch me. If you're a man, come touch me. You're a bitch. You're a bitch.
Well, come outside. Why are you hiding behind the wall? Guys.
Don't touch the car. Please.
He's hiding. Guys, he's hiding.
Hey, guys, enough. He's beating. Enough.
It's chaos.
Sorry.
All right, so you can see there a guy doing his best impression, his best kind of cosplay Osama bin Laden, threatening to kill people feet away from police officers. You can see police officers in this video, and they're just standing there. Now, I've heard some explanations, well, they're trying to de-escalate. So I can perhaps see not arresting him on the spot, immediately right there, because his fellow Hamas supporters could very easily turn violent. These are obviously violent people. They're advocating for violence. They're threatening violence. So I don't know. There's some police judgment to take place, although advocating violence exactly right there on the spot in front of police normally would warrant a police response at that exact moment. Although if I was the cops, I'd maybe let him talk. Let him finish saying what he's saying to gather the evidence and then arrest. But they didn't wait till he was done for the evidence to be accumulated. They didn't wait just till the protest was done to not spark it, turning explicitly violent, not just calling for violence and genocide there. They just didn't place charges, period. Their excuse was that it was not against the police, it was against an individual. And the individual just didn't want charges and create a fuss. But that's not the way charges work in Canada. The police do not need your permission to place charges. They might listen to you a bit, but if it's clear and someone's committed a crime, like if someone chopped my left arm off and I said I don't want to press charges, the police are still going to press charges for chopping my left arm off. They didn't do anything. So maybe we'll start with the police response, Nigel. What do you think can justify the police doing absolutely nothing to open terrorism supporters and genocide supporters, threatening violence right in front of them with clear evidence and doing absolutely nothing?
Oh, I think it's terrible. I mean, to your point about it's a dumb public relations move for Hamas supporters to go after Christmas, they just did, and they just got away with it. And the message that takes is, hey, what does it take? Come on, boys, let's go and do it somewhere else. There was video there. You'll probably pick it out in a minute. You hear the man threatening a police officer saying, I'll put you 6 feet under. Like, I understand that they don't want a fight. They don't want an insurrection. They don't want an armed rebellion that they have to put down in the middle of a shopping mall. I do get that. But what exactly, if you're not going to say no to that, what are you going to say no to? And the answer is, we don't know yet, because nobody has yet said no to this kind of behavior. I think it's absolutely asking for more trouble. I understand that I think the word went out, well, let's hit the shopping on December the 23rd. Yes, we'll see what happens on the 23rd. But if there are outrageous scenes, it's going to be because they didn't stop it at this particular incident here. The word needs to go out.
You know, Corey, we haven't seen vigilante responses to anything yet. But when the police do nothing in the face of this, it both justifies and incentivizes vigilante responses. You know, how concerned are you that that's going to be the inevitable result here if the police do absolutely nothing, that Jewish people or people who simply are opposed to genocide of the Jewish people and who are opposed to Hamas and other radical Islamist organizations like this, that they're just simply going, okay, these guys say they're going to crash malls again on the 23rd, that you're going to see a bunch of people show up and take matters into their own hands if the police do nothing.
Oh, there's a very high risk of that. And, you know, when you see more and more disorder, you see less separating it and people becoming more and more offended, more and more concerned. There is a high potential for somebody saying, well, that's it. I'm going to get up and deal with this myself, which will be far worse than having the police involved. I mean, there's a much lesser chance of some self-control or properly even, you know, vigilantism, I mean, has its appeal in some senses, but they can often target the wrong people. It's not a good development. That we have to lay down the law with these extremists. Hamas isn't pretending to be nice. They're going out of their way to show that they are violent, evil, and murderous, and their supporters are doing so as well. And it's like they keep upping the game, and it's the Western world that denies it. You know, they attacked a music festival, and there were people saying, "Oh, they wouldn't have done that." Well, they gave you the video of it. They said, "Well,
they broadcasted it live.
They didn't rape people. They gave you video of them raping people." Well, they're not calling for the death of all the Jews. It's in their mandate. Like, quit denying this. And their supporters are doing the same. They're getting on the streets and they're saying, we're here. We're going to put you 6 feet under. We're going to shut down your businesses. We're going to assail your local traditions. They're just going to keep moving forward and forward until somebody says stop. And it's going to be a heck of a lot better if it's the authorities that draw the line in the sand rather than some upset citizens who get in there, and then we could have a riot happening in a shopping mall, and nobody's going to win with that.
The problem here, Corey, is that the politicians who should be dealing with it are afraid to because they feel that they will be branded as racist or that they will lose that ethnic vote. So they shut up and are silent when they
Cowardice.
should be. It's utter cowardice.
Where are the police here? Like the police are. There's some political directive and things from mayors and whatnot. And some of it is just their own, you know, they're operating independently, operationally on the ground. It's a combination of things. And the accountability can get pretty fuzzy, but they're just allowing this. And it's not just Toronto. We shouldn't just pick on the Toronto police. It's everywhere that we've seen this across most of the Western world. Strangely enough, I think the only place I've seen police have zero tolerance and just arrest, sometimes with significant force if necessary, people calling for genocide against Jewish people in these protests is in Germany, where there's just a very long-standing law that you're not allowed to call for genocide of the Jews. When those laws are written, they probably didn't think it would be used against migrants, but that is what it is. So that's the only place you're seeing hardcore crackdowns on it outside of Israel, I suppose. But we're just seeing almost no police crackdown against this kind of thing. When I have a feeling that, like, if it was a bunch of white guys with shaved heads going around saying the exact same things, I think we'd be rightfully seeing some cracked skulls. We'd be seeing a hard police crackdown. But they're not doing it here for some reason.
No, and it's a dangerous intimidation. I mean, you think of the rights of the others. They always seem to overlook the rights of the others. What about the business owners in the mall? What about the families that just wanted to go shopping? And people saying, well, they didn't attack anybody. Come on, that is intimidating. You are not comfortable. You do not feel safe when you have a bunch of masked people screaming death threats walking around you. This isn't a civilized country when you can allow that sort of thing to happen. Same sort of thing outside of a Indigo, where they laid out a bunch of fake body bags in front of the door and were screaming and chanting outside. And
because the company has some Jewish ownership.
Yeah, and I saw some people defending it, Canadian progressives saying, well, people could still go in and out of the store. Mm-hmm. Your average person isn't going to walk that gauntlet to go into a business, and they know bloody well that they won't. But again, I think it's Nigel used the analogy. It's like the kid. They're always putting I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. And they're going to see how far they can get until you finally wind up and crack them.
Well, they are touching now. They're threatening murder in front of police, and police doing nothing. I think it was supposed to be yesterday or the day before. Hamas supporters were saying they were going to hold marches through the plus 15s in Calgary. For those of you not in Calgary, the plus 15s are kind of think of it as an above ground tunnel network, and it's used to kind of get around the business district of downtown Calgary. It's kind of funny because it wasn't very cold. I don't know why you'd hold it in the plus 15s unless it's very cold. People are actually on the streets, but they're promising to hold it. We sent some reporters around the plus 15s. We actually didn't see this happening. It seemed to just.
I think these groups are getting smaller, which I think is why they're getting a little more extreme too, though, right? We're not seeing perhaps a broader rational group anymore, but you're seeing the core, the real nutty ones, and that's part of why we're seeing escalating things as well, because they're in smaller numbers. I think they wanted to hit the plus 15s, but when only 30 people, RSVP'd, they said, we're maybe not going to do
I think they also feel they need probably bigger numbers for the plus 15s, because who's in the plus 15s? It tends to be fairly kind of right-wing, conservative Calgary business folk. And if there's only 30 of them, they don't have the numbers to be able to sufficiently intimidate. So if it's only like 30 Hamas supporters walking around, they're not going to be able to throw their weight around and threaten violence without getting a little bit of it back themselves, I think. So they're going to need bigger numbers than that to be able to pull off a plus 15 protest in downtown Calgary.
If they do, I propose closing the doors and filling them with water so they can get a taste of home.
From the river to the sea.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, related. Derek Holt, he is Vice President, Head of Capital Markets at Scotia Bank, saying something that you don't expect to hear from a Scotia Bank VP type. So here's just a bit of what he said. He says, immigration is excessive, full stop. Canada just added about 431,000 people in Q3 alone here. That's like presto, here's a new city of London, Ontario, created in 1 quarter, or almost a new city of Hamilton, a 1.1% quarter-over-quarter non-annualized increase in population in 1 quarter. Stats Can noted that even just in the first 9 months of this year exceeded population growth for any other year since Confederation in 1867. Goes on from there. So, I mean, you don't have to be a shut the borders, build a wall, anti-immigration type to think that 400,000 people a quarter is maybe a bit excessive for a country Canada's size and population, particularly when Canada's facing a massive housing shortage, when we still have areas of significant unemployment in the country. And this is entirely outside of the cultural or religious arguments. And, some groups probably assimilate a bit easier than others. I'd argue that Hamas lovers are not going to be an easy integration into Canada. But we'll start with you, Corey, about, do you think something like, so Holt here is not, he's not Bob from Red Deer who, people expect have a problem with immigration. This is a Laurentian senior banker. Do you think this is going to have any impact on Ottawa's policies at all?
I hope so. Like, if it's the beginning of some, respectable people in high positions coming out and saying the emperor has no clothes, saying the numbers that other people and pundits have been saying now for quite some time, just that these numbers right now are unsustainable. We can't manage this. We don't have enough houses. We don't have enough healthcare facilities. We don't have the ability to do that. So it might embolden others in his sort of position in the business community, maybe the political community, to be able to come out and say what I think everybody's already been thinking, that we just can't do this. The problem is bringing in these immigrants is pumping up our GDP. And it's keeping us from going into a technical recession. That's why the Liberals are doing it. But the reality is the GDP per capita is sliding into the toilet. Mm-hmm. And, people with any economic knowledge, such as the gentleman from Scotia, know this and understand this. And I don't see too many more standing by and allowing the federal government to basically crater Canada's economy just to try and avoid a recession that might be politically unpopular.
I think there's also an element of I think there's an expectation within the Trudeau Liberals that these are people who are going to vote for them. Now, strictly speaking, they can't vote until they've been here 3 years.
Well, it's it's an assembly line of voters.
It's an assembly line of voters who are going to be sympathetically disposed. And this whole thing is so counter other elements of federal policy. For example, you're trying to cut carbon dioxide emissions. Well, guess what? You've just brought in an increase. I gather it's been 1 million people this year, so that's like 2.5% of the population. And you are now asking everybody else to dampen their carbon emissions so that you can keep
1.25 million.
1.25 million. So it's an even larger percentage. So there we go. It doesn't work. If you want to bring down carbon emissions, packing people in is not going to work.
Well, the idea of reducing carbon emissions is we have to make people poorer because poor people emit less carbon. So therefore, we should keep them in poor countries and keeping these people poorer. That should be the argument, then, right?
Yeah, I'll let you make that one. But I mean, as far as bringing people into Canada, it just goes against what they're over here. They're bringing the people in. Over there, they're trying to lower carbon emissions. Well, those two don't go together. And meanwhile, you're creating a massive housing shortage. And mark my words, the day will come when people will look at your house and say, well, you've got spare rooms. Why aren't you opening up your spare rooms to take these unhoused people who we keep bringing in? And when you've filled your spare rooms, we've got more people we can bring in. I mean, it hasn't happened yet. But that's the kind of liberal blame people who have something if they feel it's in their interest to do so.
The government used to call it billeting, and it was one of the triggers of the American Revolution.
It certainly was. And during the years of the Soviet Revolution in the early 1920s, Ayn Rand talks about this in her book, We the Living, how people actually were basically dispossessed of their homes in order that they could pack people in. So, I mean, it's happened before. It may not happen in this case, but you can see how the mind might be working back in Ottawa.
Yeah, and it's a driver of inflation, particularly around housing. Housing is one of the biggest drivers of, and again, I quibble a bit with the language here. That's not inflation, that's cost of living, and they're closely associated, but inflation is devaluation of the currency, of money, not necessarily how far your dollar goes. And those things are closely related.
The Taxpayer Association guy comes out every time.
I quibble with it a bit. It's like, an increase in taxes is not an increase in inflation. It's increase in cost of living. Those things are closely related, but they're not the same. So I'm going to quibble a bit with their language, but whatever. We'll say inflation because I guess that's what people call it, but it's not really what it is here. But it's driving up massively the cost of living through housing. And I just don't know how they're supposed to square the circle with the voting public that we have this huge housing shortage. We promise we're trying to solve it. So there's supply and then there's demand. So we're going to moderately increase supply, but we're just going to bring in a tidal wave of new demand. We bring people to this country. We better well have a place to put them. And I'm fine with bringing people here. All three of us at some point, our families came here. Not even family, you're an immigrant. So I'm fine with it.
I came out to the colonies of my own free will to assist. Now then, what's hypocritical about that?
It was your colonies at the time, perhaps. Yeah. But you have to bring in reasonable numbers of people, and you need to make sure they can reasonably adapt and assimilate. Now, assimilation's a bad thing, apparently, in Canada. They're not supposed to assimilate at all, but we don't even seem to care about the numbers. So we're supposed to pay lip service on the supply side for housing, but we just bring in a tsunami of people driving up demand. Maybe let's talk about the Conservatives here, because the Conservatives are so terrified talking about immigration.
They won't touch this.
Yeah, and Poilievre is bolder than previous Conservative leaders on a lot of topics, but he's afraid on this one because Conservatives, if they even talk reasonably and moderately about immigration, even a moderate center left, just not towing the line of the extreme open borders, unlimited immigration line, they get tarred as racist and xenophobic and anti-immigration. Is there any hope here that the Conservatives are going to be able to grow a pair here? Because they're rightfully afraid of it. Conservatives get tarred with it so damn easily. Are they right to stay silent and probably do nothing about it?
Do it smart, do it as politically as you do. And don't make Poilievre the front man to talk about. Get one of the members of Parliament. I know it sounds crass, but it's the way it works. Who is a new Canadian or is settled Canadian to come up and speak about it then. So it's a little more difficult to smear it, when it is somebody who has located within Canada to speak about this. I mean, enough Canadians are speaking out. It's as I said. I mean, when we're seeing the head, VPs and banks that are starting to speak out, if enough people, respectable people, are speaking against this, the safety in numbers, I think, should allow more to speak up.
In the Harper years, the rhetoric was always about new immigrants why do they come to Canada? Well, because it's to be a bit Reagan-esque about it. It's a shining city on a hill. People come here because they value the freedom, they value the democracy, they value the ability to go out and live their dreams, build their life. That's the kind of people that we thought were coming in. I think largely were coming in, and they were coming in at that time at the rate of about 200,000 a year.
Even that is a huge immigration number. It was still record immigration at that time. We're just twice it now. We're much more than twice. We're 4 times.
1.25 million, did you just say?
Yeah, we're 5 times that.
So I have to wonder how many of that 1.25 million say, Canada, I get off the plane, I kiss the soil, here I will live out my dreams, or quite what their motivation might be.
Well,
it may not be what I just said.
Another challenge that's going to come from this, and I'm surprised we haven't seen more of it yet too, though, is with the lack of resources. And it's unfair to the people coming here when they find out, oh wow, this is a cold country, there's not good housing to find myself in, the cost of living is high. they're going to try and go south of the border.
Mm-hmm.
And our neighbors are going to start getting crabby with us. If, they're dealing enough with people coming north from the south border, and now they get people coming south from the north border, we could see some bigger repercussions of this whole thing.
Yeah. If they try to cross north to south, they'll just get shipped right back again. Why? It's a whole other discussion when they're coming from south to north. Yeah. But
the problem is it's the world's largest undefended border. Yeah. And we want it to stay an undefended border, open border. That is a good open border, free flow of goods, people, and services. But if it becomes a serious security concern for the United States, it's going to become a little less free because it's easy to cross. I crossed it once in a farmer's field outside of Coots, I don't know, probably a decade ago, just for fun.
Yeah, I just south of Milk River, it's just a barbed wire fence. Yeah.
No, there wasn't even a fence there. Yeah. It's literally a cornfield, and there's like a divide of, there's like a little goat path for the U.S.-Canada border, and I stepped over it just to be like, haha, I snuck in the United States, and I stepped back over it. It's easy. It's easy. We want it to stay easy. So, okay. Well, let's move on. So Ottawa is very open, about letting in anyone who thinks they might even vaguely want to come here, but very restrictive about products that can make your life better in some ways. Like, I don't know, the ability to drink a iced cappuccino at Tim Hortons without your straw turning to mush before your eyes. So, for some time, Ottawa's had its ban on single-use plastics, including plastic straws and even compostable plastic style grocery bags. Absolutely moronic stuff. I just buy a bunch of plastic straws on Amazon and keep it in my truck. About a week ago, I took my daughter to Tim Hortons, and I ran out of my big plastic straws for an iced cappuccino, and I was like, oh crap, I have to use what they have. So I just asked for 5. Asked for 5 straws, and as soon as it gets limp, you throw it away. I don't know how this is saving the environment. I go through half a tree just to drink one iced cappuccino at this point. But Ottawa, to my surprise, Ottawa lost in court on this one. This was, is unconstitutional, ultra vires outside of Ottawa's jurisdiction, and the federal government's fighting it. They've now, Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, to no one's surprise, announced that Ottawa's going to press forward and appeal the court's decision that said that this ban was unconstitutional. And Alberta saying it's going to get intervener status and go to fight it. Where does the fight go from here, Nigel?
Well, there's a couple of things here. One is that, as Premier Smith said this morning in the interview that we had, which will be up later today when it's been processed, the Environment Minister is 99% ideologue. There is no pragmatism in him at all. And so if they get an order that they don't like, they just ignore it. They just barrel on through. I mean, we're talking now about the straws, but they lost on Bill C-69. They treat it as if the court never spoke. And I understand that in that particular case, there are a few technicalities surrounding it, but they do not respect the spirit of the judgments. They do not respect the actuality of the judgments. And the other thing is that this is one of these word games that they play. Obviously, we are surrounded by plastic. There is nothing toxic. I put this in, lick this, I'm not going to die. If I go into hospital, everything they put near me, in me, is going to be made of plastic. Why? Because it is sterile. It is pure. It is fresh out of the packet, and it is sterile, pure, and not toxic. And yet the Environment Minister will stand there and in the one breath say that carbon dioxide, which is plant food, is pollution, and in the next breath say that this thing is going to kill you. It's toxic. So there is some very serious.
You need to follow the science, Nigel.
Oh,
science.
I tell you, then it goes on. But you ask, what's this about? The Smith government is going to fight it. They will probably win it because it's self-evidently obvious.
I don't know. Now goes to the Supreme Court, which is pretty stacked by Trudeau. I mean, but it's made some decisions recently that
C-69
surprised me.
Yeah,
it has surprised me.
They gave you C-69. They made too. Don't forget, these people are political in a different way, and they can see that the Liberal government is actually not commanding the support of the people. Polls continue to plunge, and when they're deciding things, they're supposed to be looking for what is the consensus of the Canadian public. It's right there in the Constitution Act. So I think they may take the view most people don't think plastic is toxic. Otherwise, they wouldn't put it anywhere near their lips, mouths, or eyes. So I wouldn't count on them winning that, but I also wouldn't count on the federal government respecting their judgment when they lose.
I suppose that's where the Sovereignty Act comes in, Corey. That, I mean, the Sovereignty Act seems to be it was weaker than the original proposed version during Smith's leadership campaign, but the version we have in legislation now more or less just puts the onus on Ottawa to sue Alberta to stop, rather than the other way around, because, traditionally Alberta sues Ottawa. And even if, we have to wait years for a judgment, and even if we win, Ottawa disregards it, doesn't do it anyway. So Alberta's just going to go ahead and do its own thing, and Ottawa's going to have to come in and stop us themselves. So I don't know, maybe talk about how the Sovereignty Act can play a role here.
It's difficult. I'm not sure if it can. I mean, the Sovereignty Act, as I've seen, it just keeps clarifying things and gives us a basis to go in with legally. And as you said, sort of forces them on the defensive to have to come in and justify things to us. But Ottawa, this particular government has made every policy a hill to die on. No matter how many court losses, public opinion losses, legislative losses, anything that happens, they will fight it to the bitter end. They won't just say, okay, that kind of failed, we'll just kind of let it die by the wayside, move on with the rest of our agenda. No, they're going to appeal it to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional, I got a feeling, like with other things in this night, that they're just going to power ahead. And what can we do provincially to stop them? I mean, we can say we aren't going to comply, but the problem is it's a private business that orders these products from over the border, which is federally controlled, and you start into a whole... Ironically, I mean, we've got straw bans that might threaten the actual unity of the country, because if the government isn't abiding by Supreme Court rulings on the Constitution, we don't have a country.
There's a great straw breaking the camel's back reference in there.
Yeah, well, it's all about optics, right? That's why they didn't want to see the co-op bags. I mean, even if they were compostable, because you can see the bag, you look at it, it looks like plastic. That bugs them more than the reality of the plastic. I mean, I know there's real issues. My property bounds on Fish Creek, and in 10 years I haven't seen a porpoise in there yet, and it's probably due to the straws that have gone into the water. But we've got to find better ways to cope with it. But like I said, it's a game of optics. It's that absurd, and that's why I use the Prentice Creek analogy with it. Like, common sense has been thrown out the window. As Nigel said, or you said, Guilbeault is a pure ideologue. You cannot reason with him. And I just don't know. I mean, we're running out of options on how to fight back with these guys.
I think it's worth picking up on that point about him being an ideologue. He is, but they let him be. Why do they let him be?
No, he was brought on specifically because he is a
he
fanatic.
has one boss.
And it's not just that he's an ideologue, it's that he's a fanatic. And that was very intentional. Trudeau knew who he was when he recruited him as a Liberal candidate. And I think the idea was to shore up their flank on the extreme left with the Greens and the NDP, so they don't continue to believe.
Well, there's another more sinister reason, and that is that every stupid thing of which we've been talking just now, he can shoulder it, and then when he has served his usefulness, he will be dispensed with. And now we've got Liberals you can reason with. There has to be a reason why they allow this man to drag their fortunes down the way they do. Can only be he'll get it done, and then he'll get dropped. And
I'm not sure he has brought their fortunes down, because he might cost them some votes in the center and the moderate center right, but he probably gets them votes with people who might switch between the Liberals and NDP, or the Liberals and the Greens. I mean, he's not going to get the many votes in Alberta, but they don't care about votes in Alberta. They don't care about votes in Saskatchewan. There's just not much in the way of seats and votes for them to get here. They care about it in other parts of the country. And Guilbeault could be valuable for that.
They're losing right across the board.
Well, now they are, but that's because it's a general meltdown.
And you know, is this thing that Guilbeault announced yesterday about the electric vehicles? And
You're just gonna. That's our next topic.
What's that?
That's our next topic.
All right. Well, let's go to it.
So,
It's about time anyway.
you know what? I'm gonna let. I think you might as well host. You can host. All right. So Ottawa's e-vehicle mandates. So I don't have the date off the top of my head, but in the not too distant future, it's going to be illegal to buy real cars and trucks.
2035. Yeah.
2035.
That's the hard line.
That's and that's banned at that time. Can't buy
100%.
them. Yeah. And in the not too distant future, these mandates are going to get in hard. I guess the idea being that gas-powered, diesel-powered vehicles are evil, destroying the earth. So now we need to buy stuff made from African slave labor, children who are working in
cobalt mines,
big cobalt and lithium mines. So I guess the idea being they could subsidize e-vehicles as much as they want. Most people just don't want to buy them. A lot of us, it just doesn't make sense. Those of us who take our vehicle out into the bush from time to time, no way in hell we're taking an e-vehicle. It's not reliable. It's just not going to do the trick. Anyone who lives outside of a downtown core of a major city, it just doesn't make much sense. So they can subsidize this stuff up the wazoo, but it's just not enough. People don't want them. Sales are dropping for this stuff. So if you can't subsidize them, they're just going to mandate them. You're going to have to buy them. You want to take more than the bus anywhere? Well, you're going to have to buy an e-vehicle. This is obviously going to create an absolute crisis in the vehicle market because it'll create scarcity. So actually, your used vehicle, hang on to, if it's gas.
Oh, it's going to be worth a lot of money.
It's going to be worth a lot more money than before because I'll buy a 20-year-old gas-powered vehicle over a brand new electric vehicle because I just depend on it more. Let's pretend the Liberals stay in power here. Highly doubtful the Liberals are going to be in power by 2035. I think maybe they'll be back in power by then.
Well, Alberta will be on its own by then if that's the case.
Yeah, but let's just pretend. Let's just pretend this happens and Guilbeault is still there, Trudeau's still there, or maybe Guilbeault is the prime minister. Who knows? Whatever dystopian world we're in here. Yeah, it's a lot scarier than Krampus. What does this look like? Are people actually are people going to be actually driving these? We'll start with you, Corey. What does it actually look like when they've mandated
I don't know. The interventionist tone he's taken, I mean, when we're talking about Guilbeault's ideological bent, and this is to the point of madness. He's talking, look at some of those short-term numbers. By 2026, 2 years from now, he wants every dealership to be 20% EV sales. You're saying and they said they're going to fine them if they don't. So these are private businesses. You're told if you don't have 20% of your market being this product, we will sanction you with fines. It's madness. I mean, I just don't know any other terms for it. I mean, I understand where they want to go. I don't agree with subsidies, but I mean, it's a way I could see bringing it about more. But if these dealerships could sell them, they already would. They've had every incentive. In fact, they're overstocked with the bloody things. I don't see where this is going to go, but it's going to disrupt the market. I could see it, again, dealers, manufacturers, service. They're going to say, I'm out of Canada. I'm done with this. We don't want any part of this mad country because we can't do business there.
Well, they put that mandate in, but they haven't promised that there will be 20% more electricity.
No, there's many more questions about the infrastructure and ability to manage these, even if it happens.
So the Premier is kicking around some interesting numbers here. I understand that she's making a political point, so this would stand further analysis. But she says that in Alberta, they sell 200,000 vehicles a year. Last year, how many were electric? 2,000. So unless they grow the interest in electric vehicles and you're trying to project how many cars you can sell, that's like 8,000 gas jobs a year that you're going to be able to sell. If they manage to kick it up to 3,000 electric cars a year, and maybe they can, because if you can't get a gas car, you probably buy what you can get. Maybe that's the federal thinking. But there's this enormous disconnect between what the public wants and what the public and what the government is prepared to say. And she's saying if it's 20% in 2026 and it's 60% in 2030, then you'd better go out and if you want a gas-powered car, you better go out and buy one now, because you're going to be on a waiting list for years. It's going to be like she didn't say this, but I'm saying it'd be like the Soviet Union.
Wait for your lotto.
You turn 16, you get on the waiting list to get your little Soviet jalopy in 20 years or something.
That's right.
Maybe we'll just go the route of Cuba, that we'll have 20, 30 years from now, we'll just have all these classic cars on the road. We'll just start fixing our cars. They're not going to physically, at this point at least, physically seize our combustion engine vehicles. They're just not going to allow new ones to be sold. So, in that case, I'm just keeping my truck forever. My truck's good for a while longer, but eventually I would probably get a new one. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just drive my F-150 until the day I die.
A punishing extra gasoline tax.
Yeah, we know he's not going to achieve these goals, but he can do a terrific amount of damage trying. That's the problem, and again, with these poor auto dealers, what the heck are they supposed to do when they're caught in the middle? This is basically Gilbo admitting a policy failure. He's saying, we don't know how to make everybody else buy these things, so we're going to find the heck out of you if you don't find a way to make everybody buy these things. Yeah. And it's out of our hands, and it's irresponsible, and it's frightening.
I think it was Reagan who said, if it moves, tax it. If it still moves, regulate it. If when it stops moving, nationalize it. So, vehicles were going well, tax it, carbon tax. Well, it's still moving. We want it to stop. So now they're going to directly regulate it. They're going to regulate what vehicles you can buy. So eventually they'll probably kill the auto industry, and that's Ontario's problem. So, whatever. But it'll become a Canadian problem because we can't get the cars we want. So then we'll end up nationalizing it. Which actually Stephen Harper partially did with autos, I suppose.
That's a different
I still haven't forgiven him for it. But
no, we sold the shares. We made money.
We did not make money in the end because we wrote off a bunch. We bought them at unfair prices. Either way, we nationalized the auto industry. Undeniable.
We bailed it out.
Bailed the shit out of it. But we bought some of it too, which was nationalization.
And then we sold it again. So let the record show.
Yes,
but anyway,
we denationalized it after we nationalized it. Yeah. But mark my words, they'll kill this, and eventually the federal government might end up opening dealerships because no one's going to want to sell it because no one's going to buy these cars. Some people will buy electric vehicles. There's a market for it. It's just not 100% of the market. It's somewhere above 0 and somewhere below 100. I don't know exactly where it is, but it's far closer to 0 than it is to 100. I'm willing to wager.
Statistics prove that out. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, people are just scared that they're not going to have the electricity available to charge them.
Well, of course we won't.
That's
we don't have the generating capability to begin with, especially with the federal new regulations they're trying to impose on the provinces for generation, especially in places like Alberta. We're clearly not going to have the generation. And also, are we going to have a charging station every few kilometers, the way we do gasoline, and who's willing to sit around and wait a few hours for your vehicle to charge?
So, Derek, I'm not. I know where you live. How many people are served by the transformer out there? The first person who gets an electric car is going to be fine. The second one will be all right. How many electric cars can that area afford before the transformer is thrown? You don't want to find out.
No, and you know what? I'm sure there's probably. I'm sure there's an EV in my neighborhood somewhere, but I don't recall ever seeing one other than an Uber that came in with a fake Mustang symbol on it. Because I guess that's what Ford does. They take their EVs and call them Mustangs. All right. Anyway, we're out of time. We're gonna wrap it up there. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Next time, I guess we'll be after Christmas here. Yeah. And Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and Hanukkah, if that's your thing too, to all of you. Thank you so much for being with us this year. I'm so grateful for you tuning in, and I'm grateful for all your support. If you're not a member of the Western Standard, here's the Christmas gift that you can give to having an independent, government funding free media. Become a member of the Western Standard. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year to get unlimited access to all Western Standard content. The Western Standard, at great financial penalty to ourselves, We pay federal taxes to fund our competitors because we do not accept the federal government's media subsidy. And if you want us to be able to continue doing the work we're doing and continue expanding the work we're doing, we need you to support us. And you're also going to get something yourself. You're not going to hit that pesky paywall anymore. So please, in the spirit of the season, in the spirit of government-free media, please become a member. Thank you very much for joining us. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and God bless. Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year.